that you guys are okay. I'm going to go ahead and start presenting now. And I'm going to be presenting the other screen. And not that one, this one. Okay. So, this is unrehearsed, and I have to apologize if it's not very well polished. Can you see my screen right now?
Yep.
Okay. So, this was Barbara's suggestion to start explaining a little bit about blockchain, because blockchain is the mechanism that we're using to implement the OU812 Open Innovation Engine, as we call it. And as you can see from this slide, there's things like ledger, blockchain, development, industries, open source, Linux, blah, 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 technical stuff. What it really means is blockchain are basically smart contracts. Now, a contract is an agreement amongst parties, and a smart contract is a self-executing contract. Excuse me. And what that means is that once you enter into the terms of the contract, it's distributed in a network of nodes so that it can't be changed. And in fact, nobody can change it once the contract is written. And once it's distributed amongst the nodes, I don't know if you guys remember Napster or some of Tor networks, etc. It's a bunch of nodes that only hold a little piece of the contract. So no single node has a complete copy of the contract. But once all the nodes put their little pieces together, then the contract is formed again. Now there's open blockchain and there's closed blockchain. Closed blockchain is where all the contracts are private and nobody can see them but the parties that need to see them. We are actually creating open contracts, and what that means that anybody that's part of the system can inspect the contract at any time. And the reason is we're trying to be 100% transparent, because we're trying to create a system that benefits the innovators, not the venture capitalists. And this is important because the present system benefits the venture capitalists and not the innovators. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. So this is just a slide talking, it's a word mash of different things. Ledger is another term for blockchain. They call it a smart ledger, smart contract, electronic ledger. There's lots of different terms for it. But the bottom line, it's a contract that can't be changed and is stored in a distributed manner so that way the people can have faith in the contract. And this is what builds community and what builds trust in the system. Now, I have to apologize as people join. If they join, I'll have to tell them that I'm recording or they can leave. Now, here's a very simple explanation of the blockchain. This is blockchain. It's from a group called Blockchain 101. And basically, it's a very high-level description. A user requests, user makes a request for a transaction. A block representing the transaction is created. The block is broadcast to nodes of a network. This is a distributed network. All the nodes validate the block. So it's kind of a voting mechanism, where it ensures that all the people that are part of the group vote and say, yes, this is a contract that we want to be part of, or this is a valid contract. And now that contract is stored in a blockchain, which is nothing more than an encrypted message that cannot be changed. So it travels this path, it gets stored in this encrypted message, and now the transaction gets verified and executed. So for example, the transaction could be Marshall's patent is now worth $50 million. They create a block for the transaction. The transaction is broadcast to the chain. The chain determines whether that is a valid transaction or some hacking attempt or something like that. And if it is, that particular transaction gets added to the block, and then everybody gets monetized. So for example, if the deal was Marshall gets a patent and she pays $35,000 for it, now company wants to buy it for $350,000. Now that travels through the chain, and now the transaction gets executed, and Marshall all of a sudden gets $350,000 for her patent that was worth originally $35,000. Any questions? I know this is kind of technical.
But also, doesn't the new owner get registered in the blockchain?
Well, there's many owners, yes, and we'll get to that in a little bit when I cover some of the slides that cover sort of a little more detail of the architecture. But yes, the next slide I'm going to cover is the OU812 model, which is going to answer your question. And if it doesn't, let me know, Charles. And by the way, you can also type questions in the chat. So this is the OU812 model, okay? It's based on blockchain, and per my wife's brilliant suggestion, she told me to explain blockchain just a little bit so you kind of understand kind of what I'm talking about at a pretty high level. So we know that blockchain can create contracts, right? And those contracts can be related to anything. I want to bring a DJ from Finland to the United States, and these are the terms of that contract. That could be a blockchain contract, and people could invest in it. And then when I bring the DJ to the United States and it gets monetized by him going to different clubs, whatever, the contract terms get executed, self-executed, and everybody in the ecosystem gets paid. So the blockchain can be applied to many, many different types of projects. But in this particular situation, the main project we're applying it to are intellectual property rights assets, specifically patents. That's the most specific. Well, a version of what we're doing is with respect to patents. So with the blockchain, we're going to be evaluating patents, and patents are assets. They're called non-tangible property rights. And what that means, it's like a car, a house, except it's not tangible. It's a piece of paper, but it still has the same value. It can be leased, it can be sold, it can be given away. So the blockchain sort of captures these patents and the owners, because there's teamwork, there's people that are generating these IPR assets. And the blockchain is keeping track of who generated what, and who owns what, and what the terms of that ownership and the monetization is. And now, based on that valuation of these assets, because patents have value, right? When you file a patent through a law firm, typically you spend anywhere from $10,000 to $35,000 to get a patent. Okay, so the basis value for a patent is $35,000, $10,000 to $35,000, the money you spent getting the patent. However, if a corporation wants the patent, they might pay $300,000 for it, right? So that means that asset went from $35,000 to $350,000. Now that number that I threw out times 10 is actually a pretty decent number. Typically patent portfolios, when they have value, increase in value about 10 times. So what that means, if you have a portfolio that's worth $100 million, that's what it cost you to get the portfolio. That's what you paid the pointy-headed attorneys like myself to acquire the portfolio. If it has value and somebody wants it, they may pay up to 10 times, and 10 times is roughly the average. So a portfolio that's worth $100 million or $100,000 to obtain could be worth $1 million. Is that right? 10 times 100,000? Yeah. So it'll be worth 10x potentially if it has value. So what we do with this blockchain is we capture the initial value based on tokens that we issue. So let's say the initial patent value is $35,000, like I said before. So we're going to issue $35,000 worth of tokens to that person, the owner of the IP. And when that IP sells for $350,000, the token value is now going to go up. The tokens that were worth $1 are now worth $10. Now, the interesting thing about this model is that there's many, many, many patents. I have my patents. Mark is going to have his patents. Marshall's going to have her patents. Alex is going to have his patents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all those patents are the IPR assets that tokens get generated off of. And what that means is, as the asset values go up, so let's say my greenhouse patents sell in the UAE for 500 gazillion dollars. Okay. That means all of the tokens go up in value because the token is common to the entire portfolio. And what that means is that everybody that has a patent in the group, whether their patent sells or not, as long as they hold on to their tokens and as long as these assets are being monetized and the value is increasing, their token value is going to increase. Now, this is important because if you've heard of Bitcoin, right? Well, Bitcoin is just the blockchain and tokens with nothing backing the token. There's no assets backing the token. What does that mean? It means the only value of Bitcoin is if people use it. As soon as people stop using Bitcoin, it has no value. However, since OU812 is actually attaching these tokens to assets, IPR assets, patent assets, what that means is that our tokens are actually backed by something that has value. And just to give you an example, the patent market was 380 billion with a B in 2018. What that means is that the buying and selling of IPR assets in 2018 netted $380 billion. That's what that market was worth. So OU812 is looking to file for IPR assets and get a piece of that market and share it amongst the team. And the team is important because, many people say, well, I'm not an innovator, I'm not a patent guy. Well, as you guys know, a team is made up more than just innovators and patent guys. A team is made up of marketing people, business people, investor angels. So a team is really made up of many components. So for example, in this team, there's an innovator in green. There's a patent attorney in blue. There's a money person in red, because he's the devil, just kidding. And there's a marketing person in orange, right? And the innovator says, okay, 10% of the monetization goes to OU812. That's one of our tenets, is that 10% of the monetization goes to the engine so that eventually we'll be able to fund our own projects, create startups, products, and services with our own funding. So 10% goes to the engine, which leaves the inventor with 90% to distribute to the team members. So he might give the patent attorney 1 or 2 or 3% and the other team members some small percentage. But the main component is that we want the innovator to maintain the majority of the equity. And this is what's disruptive about this system. In the present system, the people that keep the majority of the equity are actually the venture capitalists. I was just checking to see if we added any new people, and it looks like we're still all the same. So anyways, that's sort of, and I know this is getting kind of technical, so if you have a question, please free to ask, and I'll try to take a breath. Go ahead.
I have a question for you. Can people invest in someone else's patent with their tokens that they have inside of this system? So for example, if someone needs money for a patent portfolio, and I think it's going to be very valuable in the future, so can I invest my tokens into their idea?
That's an excellent question, Alex. And the reason I have Alex here is because he grilled me on my previous presentation that I did at Reston Tech Talks. And he was like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't understand. And he was right. I mean, I was talking at such a high level. But to answer his question, it's actually an excellent question. And the question is, if you have tokens in the system, right? Well, first of all, anybody can buy tokens. Anybody. This is going to be open to the world. So what that means is you don't have to be part of the team. You can just say, hey, I believe in OU812. I want to buy 10 gazillion tokens because I think they're going to go up in value. So the first component is anybody can buy tokens, investors, anybody. Now, if you happen to own tokens, the question that Alex asked is actually a wonderful question. What that means is that we as a team, remember we have a team, we can say, yes, we want to take some of our tokens and fund Marshall's new startup because we believe in Marshall and we think that her startup is a good thing. And we as a team can decide to invest our tokens in somebody else's portfolio, project, anything. So the answer to your question, Alex, is yes. You can take your tokens that you have in your system and you can use them to help anybody else in the team that needs help, because people are going to need help. For example, I need help right now. I've got a patent portfolio that's going to be very, very valuable in the UAE, and I have to file for patent protection in the world. Well, worldwide patent protection costs about $100,000. Okay, so if I had 100,000 people that believed in me and were willing to put in $1, I would be able to issue those 100,000 tokens to those 100,000 people, and I would take that $100,000, develop the portfolio, and then when the portfolio is worth $1 million or 10 times, what is that, Alex? 100 million, 100,000 times 10, a million,
Yeah,
a million. Everybody that contributed now would get the increase in their tokens. So does that answer your question, Alex?
yes, that answers my question. And to summarize, so it's like an economy where the currency is backed by an asset, which is patents. And then as those patents increase in value, the overall value of the token increases.
Correct.
So invested, their money goes up as well.
That is correct. And this is, he brings up an interesting point, which is typically these IPR assets are not valuable to the end of the term. Now, a patent lasts 20 years, right? So if I file a patent right now and I get it issued, 20 years from the filing date, the patent is gone. So you have a 20-year term to monetize the patent. And the interesting thing about patents is the value that they have the most is at the end of the term. Now, why is that? Why do you think, I'm going to put out a question to the team to see if you guys can figure this out. Why do you think a patent has more value near the end of the term as opposed to the beginning of the term? Open question.
I'd say because it comes free to the public to grab that design or whatever it is and re-energize it.
Bingo. A patent value is based on use. Okay. In other words, if somebody's not using it, it has zero value, right? So what that means is if you're truly innovating, if you're way ahead of the curve, you're designing houses in Mars, for example. True story. We're going to be designing houses in Mars based on this patent portfolio that we have on these greenhouses. So, that patent's probably not going to be valuable till the very end of the term, right? Because that's when people will actually be doing it. So Mark is correct. The reason that patents have value near the end of the term is because if you're truly innovating, it takes a long time for people to catch up and to do what you're doing. And in fact, an indication of value, in fact, the major indication of value of a patent, take a guess what the major indication of value of a patent is. What do you think? What do you think tells you that a patent has a lot of value? And Mark hit upon it a little bit. Well, I'm going to tell you, forward citations. What that means is if your patent is getting cited by other patents, specifically by large corporations, now you know that there's somebody using your invention, that invention has a lot of value.
What do you mean by citing your patent?
Well, when you put out a patent, right, and you try, let's say there's a bunch of prior art or patents that are already published and are out there, right? And let's say, for example, somebody looks at this engine and they go, oh, I want to use this engine to do trading, whatever. They think of some way of using it in a different way. However, this is prior art to them. My patent is prior art to them. So they have a duty to disclose my patent to the patent office. And what that means is that, let's see, Charles has a couple of questions. Okay. So I'll finish this and I'll let Charles ask his questions. So what that means is that, that I'll give you an example. One of my clients created an engine. It was a document intelligence engine. He wasn't filing any patents because he was open source guy from Holland. And the way I got him as a client is I said, do you realize there's people getting patents based on your engine? And he didn't. There's people that were creating inventions based on the engine that he invented that he didn't patent. So in other words, people were using his invention and he had no way of going after them because he didn't patent it. So, Mark, the answer is that if people are using your invention, they have to cite it as prior art. And Charles, you have a question?
Yeah. Okay. I I need a little more of an explanation about like why at the end of a 20-year the 20-year period before it's about to go public, why patents become more valuable if they're not being used.
No, yeah.
And well, go ahead and answer that one. And the second one's sort of a different kind of
Okay. Well, the reason is it takes people time to catch up. So if you're truly innovating, it's going to take people a long time. For example, one of my clients that invented an unhackable computer system, his patents right now are being infringed, and it's been 15 years till people caught up to what he was doing. So what that means is, it takes the industry a while to figure out what you're doing. And then once they realize it has value, they start implementing it. And once they start implementing it, now you've got potential infringers. Now you have value because people are using it. Does that answer your question, Charles?
Yeah. So maybe what I missed before was that what was patented actually needs to be in use for it to be valuable. So like unused patents, that's not going to increase in.
That's correct. Nothing has value unless it's used, right?
Sure.
I mean, think about it. Anything that is not used has zero value.
Sure.
Because if you don't use something, it has no value. If nobody else uses it, it has no value. So yes, use. Go ahead.
It's only worth something if someone wants it.
Sure. No,
yes.
I understand that. I thought you were saying that, like, all patents become more valuable at the end of the 20-year period.
Go ahead.
You got a lot of corporation out there that fence sit, so they'll basically almost just sit there and troll for expiry dates to finish, and then basically grab it at the last second, and then innovate it into their model.
Mm-hmm.
And the original holder of that patent, well, he's lost it because he hasn't renewed it, and then someone, probably with a lot more backing, has then turned around and monetized it.
Okay, so the patents can be renewed then.
No, they can't. No, they can't. And you guys raised an important question. A patent is the right to exclude somebody from practicing your invention for the term of the patent, and that's the quid pro quo. You get 20 years from the filing date to prevent others from doing what you're doing, but at the end of that 20 years, it enters the public domain. And what that means is if you can't do anything with it in 20 years, well, tough shit. It goes into the public domain. So the patents that have no value or that have shitty marketing, or pardon, I shouldn't be cussing, the ones that have, that don't see the light of the day for whatever reason, they enter the public domain. So yes, it's perfectly fair to look at an expired patent and to practice it. That's part of the agreement that you make when you file a patent application. You agree to fully disclose your invention for that limited monopoly in exchange for it entering the public domain when the patent expires. And this is why patents generate innovation. All this innovation, every single day there's patents that are expiring, and startups now could be creating startups based on those expiring patents, and it's 1,000% fair. It's totally fair. So there's nothing wrong till waiting till patents expire to practice what's in the patent. That's part of the agreement.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that. Two sort of related questions. You're talking about, so there's this 20-year period for this exclusive intellectual property to be to be property, and a patent portfolio is in essence a collection of these pieces of property that can be sold, almost as a thing, right, as a bundle. So two questions about that. One, with the same sort of blockchain technology, could you not, if we're looking at this sort of ecologically, like your diagram here, is there, like, why couldn't you also create, in essence, if this is all about contracts and the blockchain is about contracts, couldn't you also do, in essence, you have a block of patents and you could license out you could license out the patents. In essence, using the same architecture. So instead of
Well,
it being a sale, it is a license thing that you could have, like, you could create more
yes.
markets and more income
Well, that's
for
a
the
good
ecology.
question. That's an excellent question, Charles. Let me answer that. A patent is like a car. Okay, you can sell it, you can lease it, you can give it away, you can let people borrow it. No difference. In the OU812 model, the inventors retain their patent rights. In other words, they can do whatever the hell they want with it. So, in other words, I'm not here to tell you, hey, man, you have to hold on to it and you have to create a startup. If you need money and somebody's offering you money, you can sell it, you can give it away, you can license it, all of the above, everything that you mentioned. So, and the blockchain gives you that ability because you set the terms as an innovator. In other words, I don't want OU812 to force inventors to not feed their families because the patent is in the pool. As long as you can buy your patent out of the pool, pay the 10% and or sell your 90%. In other words, we're trying to keep it very flexible where the team, specifically the patent holders, can do whatever they want with their intellectual property, including selling it. The only caveat being that 10% of the monetization goes to OU812. And the other caveat being is that it's open source for free and educational use. So those are the main agreements. In other words, if you want to take your patent out of the group, that's fine. And if you want to sell it to a corporation, that's fine. And if you want to give us 10%, that's part of the deal. And the other part of the deal is that you have to agree that the little people can practice it. So that kind of travels with, that's the terms that travel with the intellectual property. But back to the other part of your question is whether all the patents get licensed at once. No.
No, that wasn't my question.
Yeah.
Like, my question is, instead of like, okay, you've created this sort of block of well, sort of relatedly, I'm just wondering, I'm just thinking about, like, how, okay, you have this beautiful architecture here.
Yeah.
How, like, I'm just thinking about, like, how do you get this out in the world? How do you make this easily accessible for companies and markets and all to interface with this model in a way that reduces friction for them to be able to do so?
Well,
Right?
you're not gonna like my answer, because this isn't an everybody can join thing. This isn't Burning Man. This is not radical inclusion. This is actually the opposite. We're creating highly motivated tech teams where people care more about the team than themselves. So, in fact, to even get your patent into the system, everybody in the team has to agree that you're worthy. And even then, people that are assholes are going to get booted. We'll say, take your patent and go. We don't need you.
Okay,
You're
but this isn't what I'm talking about.
okay.
Like, so for example, you were talking about this patent portfolio that you're trying to raise $100,000 for, to
Yeah.
that in essence, there's a potential market in UAE, right?
Okay.
But you would in essence, I'm assuming here that block of patents would be sold exclusively to the buyers in UAE, for
Correct.
example, right?
No, they could be done anyway. You could lease it, sell it, rent it, give it away.
Okay. All right. So that's my question. That's my question there.
The innovator has the choice. They can do whatever they want with it.
Has a choice, but I'm also thinking here, and maybe I'm not understanding this model, but it just seems to me that you could almost create different clusters of, by say, market segment or function or industry.
Look at the next slide.
Okay, great, sure. So
Okay.
instead of like selling the block of patents as a block, you could in essence make it so that those blocks are as a whole or individually.
Correct.
Or even with this cross block,
Yes.
you could license almost a suite of patents.
Correct.
For your application, or
yes.
Like, hey, if we can get this one, then we're all good. And then that way you now have ongoing streams of revenue into.
That is exactly what we're doing, Charles. That is exactly what we're doing. Since the innovators maintain control of their IP, an investor could come in and say, I want one from the hardware patent, I want this one from the software, I want this one from the gaming, and I want this one from the apps and one from the biotech.
Sure.
We don't care because they're all attached to individual innovators, right? And as long as those innovators agree that they want to get rid of their patent, and if the price is right, they're going to get rid of their patents, and that investor is going to be able to buy whatever patents they want. And actually, that's a really good question, because I had some investors that were asking that same question. They're saying, "Oh, does this mean I have to license the whole entire portfolio at once?" And the answer was no. You can pick and choose which ones you want. And again, that's another good point that you made, Charles, because think of this as a neural network. Okay, your brain has a bunch of neurons that are all interconnected, and
yeah, exactly.
they don't all fire at once, right? The sustainable patent might fire, or the hardware patent, or the blockchain might fire. But as long as the neurons are firing, the overall value of the tokens will keep increasing. And in fact, the more patents we have in the system, the more stable the system becomes. And that's pretty simple, because if you have one patent, right, all your eggs are in that one basket and either loses or makes money, right? It's a 1 or 0 sort of situation. But now if you have 1,000 patents, what are the chances of all of them losing or all of them winning? In fact, as soon as you get to a large percentage of patents, then the system stabilizes, and in fact, the tokens stabilize. So the other reason we're putting 10% back into the system is so that the base keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the tokens become more and more stable as more assets get added to the system. Think of a diversified portfolio of stocks. No different, right? If you have one stock in one company and COVID hits and they get knocked out, guess what? You lost all your money. But if you have 1,000, if your money's spread over 1,000 companies, what's the probability that all 1,000 are going to fail at the exact same time? It goes towards 0. So that's an excellent question, and I hope I answered it.
Yeah, thank you.
So this slide covers the multiple sort of groups, like a neural network that involves shareholders that are startups, small vendors, universities, and the revenue streams come from IPR licensing and product sales. In other words, we're going to be creating startups, products, and services. And let's see, we got somebody joining, so I have to give them the hello, Gene, can you hear me? Or did they already leave? Gene is outside the Villamar firm and joined. Hey, Gene, I just want to let you know that this is being recorded, and Google advised me to tell you that it's being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, it means that you should leave. If you don't mind being recorded, go ahead and tell me in the chat room, that in the chat box, which is at the top right-hand corner on my screen, that it's okay that we record this. So I'll wait for you, Gene. Sorry to put you on the spot, but the Google lawyers told me to do that. So Gene, if you can hear me, please type in the chat window, which is at the top right, that you have no problem consenting to this. Or you can turn on your microphone and tell me you consent, because it's being recorded, so it doesn't really matter how you consent. And I don't know if you can hear me, Gene, or if you can. Okay, what do I do in this situation, team?
I think if they don't leave, it's okay. You can just keep going. So
even though Google told me to get consent?
Well, I mean, I assume they heard you, so.
Let's see. Hey, Gene, can you turn on your camera for a second?
Well, here's another idea: is you can put something. Maybe you can put something in the text chat that, like, if you are here, that you consent to being recorded.
Okay, I'll do that.
If you do not consent to be recorded, you can. You should leave.
Okay. No, Gene already replied. Sorry about that, Gene. Okay, hi. You just record my audio is okay. I try to turn on the camera. You don't have to turn on the camera, Gene. In fact, it takes up a lot of bandwidth. So actually, not turning on the camera is great. Okay, let me continue. Gene, you're a little bit late, so I'm going to keep plugging along. This is the OU812 architecture, and we're talking about how there's these portfolios that are shared amongst the open innovation ecosystem, and it creates revenue streams. And by the way, Gene, this is going to be recorded, and I will go ahead and post the recording in the Meetup group or wherever you found me, and that way you'll be able to see the whole entire thing. So the fact that you got here late is not a problem, because this is being recorded, and that's the reason I did it. So anyways, continuing, this is going to create licensing opportunities, sales opportunities. And it's also, this is another interesting part of the model. Right now, we have experts in various fields. We have experts in mycology, sustainability, blockchain, cryptocurrency, data visualization, you name it. Right now, there's about, I think, 40 or 50 groups on Facebook covering every possible technology you could imagine. And the idea is that we're creating groups in all these areas and creating patent portfolios in all those areas and using that as a vehicle to license these or create products, startups, and services that can be used by the corporations or the public or licensed to the corporations or the public. But the other interesting component, since we have teams of experts, is that now we can also do product development, and also we can have the corporations acquire our startups. So for example, we might have a corporation that says, hey, can you guys develop a myco material that does this and this, that replaces leather or something like that? Well, we would turn to our mycology group. We would solve the problem. We would wrap intellectual property around it, and we would sell that to the corporations at a fraction of the cost that it would take them to develop it. Because remember, part of the model is we're teaching everybody how to write patents. That's the secret sauce that is open source, that we're teaching all the team members how to write patents. And that's part of the educational team. We have an educational team that's going to teach everybody that wants to participate how to write patents to minimize costs so that we can generate these portfolios much cheaper than the corporations can. And that's where some of the value comes in. So now this slide is going to be broken down in a little bit more detail. And, this is going to go pretty fast because I kind of covered it. Why OU812? Because without OU812, startups, universities, and small inventors cannot fairly compete with the corporations. And why is that? Why can't they fairly compete with the corporations? Well, it's because the very high cost of intellectual property rights protection. And by the way, you're looking at the most expensive component of intellectual property rights protection. It's the patent attorney. I'm the reason why patents cost $10,000 to $35,000. So I was trying to solve that problem by saying, look, if I create a system where innovators keep control of their IP, they give me some equity for helping them out, and the other gives some equity to the other team members for helping them out, then we can have a system of open collaboration. And that's what we're trying to create is an open collaborative system. So how do we do this? And the way we do this is through team-based open innovation, which I covered earlier, right? So we have a bunch of teams in different sectors and different technology areas that want to participate in this open innovation ecosystem. And what I mean by that is everything we do is protected and it's open source. So it's protected open source. It's protected so that the corporations have to buy it if they want it. And it's open source so that the people can practice it without us breathing down their necks. In other words, I don't want to go after people that are building my greenhouses in their backyard because I want everybody to build my greenhouses in their backyard. I don't want corporations copying my greenhouses and making them in China and driving me out of my own market. Okay, I would be able to choose when they decide to use my innovation that they have to pay. So that's the reason we protect first and then we open second. Of course, the IP is made up of an umbrella, which includes patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. So there's more than just patents. There could be copyrights to songs. there could be trademarks, there could be all sorts of works that fall under the intellectual property right umbrella that all get evaluated and that all become part of this open innovation system that can be monetized by attaching value to these assets. And of course, with intellectual property rights protection and sharing, and of course the important component, monetization, because we're not doing this for our health. We're doing this to help the innovators feed their village. For example, let me give you the best case scenario of OU812. This is what I consider the best case scenario. There's an inventor in India that's the next Einstein, and he has no money at all. Okay, he has zero money, but he's the next Einstein, and he has no possible way to participate in the patent system because it's just not available to him. In that situation, OU812 may form a nonprofit organization, and we may do his portfolio 100% pro bono, so that when he gets monetized, 100% of the profit goes to the small inventor in India so that he can feed his village. So the idea of OU812 is actually much bigger than just, how do we make money on patents? It's really, how do we save the world? How do we enable people from all over the world that don't have access to this very, very expensive patent system to participate in it so they can monetize their brain and bring value to their local economies? Now think about this. Why do people migrate? Why does somebody, walk 1,000 miles carrying a child to try to come into the United States to pick fruit for $10 a day? Okay. He does it because that's better than what he has. Okay. In his country, there's drug lords and murder and rape and killing and pillaging and plundering. And that person will walk 1,000 miles carrying his kid and climb a fence in order to find a better life for his family. And you know what? I would do the same thing myself. I would do anything for my family. So this does not surprise me that people do that. But why do they do that? Because they don't have opportunities in their own countries. And the ultimate goal of OU812 is to allow people from all over the world to monetize their brains, to participate in the patent system, and to be able to feed their village. So that's one extreme of the OU812 model. The other extreme is we do work for corporations. They need the next whatever, and we get a team of innovators that solves the problem, wraps intellectual property around it, and sells it to the corporation for the most money we can possibly get. So one end is 100% pro bono. The other end is maximizing profit. And again, this is not, I was trying to figure out what kind of system I'm creating. Is it socialist? Is it Marxist? Is it whatever? This is a capitalist system. I mean, this is a system where, we're looking for team members that are, that are adding assets, that are going to own the assets, and they're going to monetize the assets. I'm going to go ahead and let my partner, Josh Lopez, into the group. Josh Lopez, by the way, is the co-founder of OU812. Josh is a wonderful human being, and I know Josh doesn't mind this being recorded because he told me already that he doesn't care if this is recorded, and he knows it's being recorded. But just to give you a little background on Josh, he was trying to create OU812 20 years ago, but he couldn't find any patent attorneys that were willing to do what I do, which is teach people what they know. Now, this does not surprise me because for the past 10 years, I've been teaching people what I know, and nobody has copied me. I mean, I've lectured in front of law firms in Finland and the United States. My videos are open source all over the web, and not one single law firm has copied me. And why is that? Why is it nobody's copying my model of teaching people what I know? Well, my wife thinks it's because I'm an idiot, and I'm teaching people what I know, and I should be really, and maybe I'm incorrect at that, but the way I look at it is, look, I want to add value and I want to help the little people. And the only way I can help the little people is by teaching them what I know. There's no other way I can work with the little people. I can't say, hey, you need 100 patents and it costs you $20,000 a patent. That's a conventional model. It doesn't work. So the only way I was able to work with, quote, the little people was by teaching them what I know. And that's my conventional practice at the Villamar firm. But that's a great question. I'll get at the Villamar firm. However, it's very unconventional. It's open source, but not copied. And that's because most people would rather sell you fish than teach you how to fish. I'd rather teach people how to fish than sell them fish, because you know what? I sleep well at night and I feel like I'm doing something good for the world versus just trying to see how I can enrich myself in the me mindset, which is not my mindset. So Josh, I met online. I forgot how. We've never met in person, but he's my co-founder and I love him as a brother, and I would take a bullet for that guy, and I've never met him in person. He lives in Austin, Texas. Keep it weird in Austin. I'm going to go visit him ASAP, and he's a wonderful, wonderful human being. He was trying to do this 20 years ago, couldn't find anybody to do it until we inadvertently connected through another group called Blue Frontiers. It's building seasteads out in the ocean. They're a Burning Man group, and that's how Josh and I met. Marshall had a good question, which comes up all the time. And I've gotten so much shit for this question, you wouldn't believe it. The question is, why do I call it OU812? And I'm going to tell you why I call it OU812. When I was a kid, I was into heavy metal. I was not into Van Halen in any way. I hated all the glam rock bands. I was into like Megadeth, the heavier stuff. Van Halen to me was like pop rock up there with Poison and all the other glam rock sort of bands. Now, they did come out with an album called OU812 when they brought in Sammy Hagar into the group. And when I saw that name, OU812, I've always been an engineer at heart. I built airplanes. I've always been tinkering. I was a natural born engineer. I took my toys apart as a kid and rebuilt them sometimes. Anyway, so I researched the story about OU812. And apparently the album was going to be called something else. I forget the name. You could look it up if you look at the history of the album. And then I think Sammy Hagar was out to lunch and he saw a delivery truck with a serial number OU812 on it. And he came back to the studio and said, guys, this is the name of our new album, OU812. It can mean, hey, you also ate one. It could, there's apparently sexual connotations to it, like, hey, you also ate some, I won't say the word, the B word. But apparently there's a lot of different connotations to it. But, the interesting thing, I liked it was that I was like, wow, these 5 characters spell out a sentence. And I've always been into cryptography. I was always into coding for whatever strange reason. And I said, someday I'm going to call my company OU812, and I don't give a fuck whether people like it or not. And I have gotten so much crap over it. It's like every single person I talk to, oh, that's a Van Halen album. Why'd you call it OU812? And I have to go through the story. But actually, it's been very beneficial because it gives me the chance to tell people the story. Sometimes it's worthwhile having a story about your startup or whatever. I have these business cards that I created where every single business card is different. Each one has a different technology in the corner. And, the reason I did it was because I wanted to match my card to the person that I was talking to. So if I was talking to a software guy, I would look through my card. I'd find like the software engine or something like that, the gaming engine. And I'd say, here, this is your card, but you can choose another card if you want. And then I would show them all the different technologies, guns, whatever. I didn't say that, but yeah, I'll do guns. So anyways, I would show them all these different cards. And it actually got me a chance to do more than hand out a card. It got me a chance to learn about the person and learn about their interest. And that's the same thing with OU812. It does sort of give me a chance to talk for 5 hours, but I will stop now. So now we've reached the end of the presentation. Nice. So I've reached, the end of the presentation. This final part is ultra technical, okay? And Marshall, you had told me you were concerned that I was going to be too technical. Let me know if I was too technical, because I want to make sure this is as an innovator or engineer, I talk at another level that oftentimes, I don't know that I'm talking at a level that people don't understand. And some people are shy enough not to tell me that they don't understand. So hopefully this was, at a high enough level that you guys could all understand it. This one's for the technical people. I don't know how many people in this group are technical. I know Mark is. I know Mark definitely is. I know Charles is pretty technical. And I know Joshua, Josh, my partner, is pretty technical. And this is the patent we just filed. This is the actual architecture of what I'm talking about. So this is how are we doing this? How are we implementing this? And we're implementing this with this architecture. And of course, there's US and PCT patents and patent applications pending. So yeah, this is protected by patents because, I practice what I preach. First we protect, then we talk about it. Okay, so I'm talking about it now because this has been protected. And, it's a fairly complex system. When you look at, the actual implementation is super complex. The high level is not that complex, but when you actually go and build this thing, it's pretty complex. So basically, a key component of the engine is what we call this air routing platform. This was invented by one of our team members. Colored cartoons were done with Doodly, which is not an open source, is a paid program that you can do cartoons with. And she's talking about a video that I did, an advertisement video for OU812, where you can have a hand drawing a cartoon and then it plays music, etc. So that's how I did that. And you can see that's part of the cartoon, the power of collaboration. And of course, this is my legal notice that my wife forced me to put on there because she's a lawyer, and I just play one on TV. So now we have the air router, which is actually a very interesting piece of equipment. It's a conventional router which can talk to the internet, and a router is how your computer connects to the internet. Right now, you guys are going through a router to see this presentation right now, and this is the internet. That's me on the internet, right? So the difference with this particular router, it's that it has two channels. It has a regular conventional internet channel that you see with the router and the internet. And I can zoom in a little bit here. So you can see that air router has this router and internet. So that's pretty conventional. What's not conventional is that we have a low band magnetic antenna that can distribute all over the world without the internet. Okay. All we need is two of these anywhere in the world, and we have worldwide coverage of the entire world. What that means, say again?
Is it still IP based?
It's proprietary. It's I can only cover, the stuff that we're actually doing at the lowest level is going to be kept as a trade secret. But what you need to know is that we have dual channels, an air channel and a regular channel. And what that means is if the internet were to go down, heaven forbid, we're still operating. We're still operating because we have a separate channel. And the plan is that we're going to have these channels distributed throughout the world. So we're going to have many, many channels. Yes, Gene, it's Doodly. So we're going to have all these channels. So there's an air link, which is an air, wireless link. And then there's a router link. And now we have the guts of the router, which I'm not going to go into details, but there's a mini antenna for collecting the input signal from these other large antennas. There's a router that routes the signal to the other router. There's a software-defined radio, which, by the way, I built the first software-defined radio on Earth when I worked at Hughes Aircraft, so I'm very familiar with these guys. And then there's a loading circuit for the antenna that's a matching circuit to make sure the antenna works properly. So basically, this structure allows us to communicate both through the normal channels and through the ether, or through the air. It bounces off of the ionosphere and bounces all over the Earth, and allows all OU812 members to survive, basically. The other interesting thing about this router, it scrubs all malicious code. This router will not let any code that's malicious enter our system. What this means is we're pretty much unhackable. There's no virus that can get through this interface because we have software. It's not signature based. Again, it's proprietary, that can actually make sure that no viruses enter our system, our little system. Yes, like a web rubber, as Joshua pointed out. So now you've got this secure channel, and you've got this software that has a place for storing the assets. You know, these are the contracts and the you know, the different patent assets. You know, the information regarding the assets. You notice they're broken up into subjects like, you know, artificial intelligence, sustainability, blah 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 blah. So they're organized as groups. So now these assets go to a valuation component, right? I talked before how these assets, and I already killed that picture, I think. Anyways, I talked before how the assets get valuated or valuation gets formed. And now that valuation gets transmitted through our system to all these nodes. These nodes are part of the blockchain that we talked about earlier here, number 4. All nodes validate the block. You know, so those are the nodes we're talking about in the chain. And these nodes include some voting mechanism that decide whether the value is good or not, whether we want the patent to come in or not, whether we think my asshole cousin is worthy of being on the team or not. And I'm picking on a cousin, but it's actually somebody else. So, you know, these are all things that can be voted on. And that's why I said it's not really an open architecture. It's really more like a special forces team. You know, we want to control who comes into the team, and it's not an everybody can join thing. You know, I want to work with people that believe in this and it would take a bullet for me, figuratively. So yes, the system is solely for a OU812, but it's also for investors outside of OU812. Because remember, we have tokens that people can buy, right? And those tokens are being generated by this self-executing code. And the self-executing code, of course, is what determines the value and the increase in value and the contracts. So this is a simplified version of the software, but just to give you an idea, you know, the nodes receive this vote request or whatever you want to call it. And then there's a voting mechanism that's part of the system where the nodes make a vote and it goes back, and then the value is assigned or not, and the asset is brought in or not, the inventor is brought in or not, the contract is validated or not. The beauty of the blockchain is we can really do anything. You know, do we want to send Marshall to, you know, Marshall was a DJ in Ibiza and she wants to come to the United States. Do we as a team want to create a project to enable that? Yes. We vote, we put in our tokens, we fund the whole entire thing. Marshall comes to the United States. We make $1 gazillion because she's the best DJ on earth. And now we all profit from it. And Marshall gets the majority of the monetization. Why? Because we're creating a system that helps the innovators, not the money people or the patent people or the other people. You know, we're creating a system that helps the innovators, whether they're artists, DJs, whatever. So this is, you know, this is a high level of the system of how it's going to work. Just to give you an idea, we're going to need about at least 250,000 to 500,000 just to implement this software. You know, so this is why we're going to the UAE. This is why we're looking for pretty substantial investment. You know, I mean, we're talking about, you know, they always say take your best number and multiply it by 10 to 100. You know, so I'm thinking we need, you know, 20, 30 million. We actually need 200, 300 million. You know, that's the kind of investment we're going to need to pull something like this off. And the beauty of it is that the UAE actually is very interested in these technologies. They have a ministry of blockchain. They also have a sustainable agriculture ministry, and they've been buying up these sort they've been buying portfolios related to the sustainability and the blockchain space. So right now we're getting ready to go to the UAE. We have some support from the U.S. Commerce Department. And the idea is we're going to take our existing portfolio of sustainability patents and our blockchain patents, and we're going to see how much money we can get, you know. And the interesting thing is that, sadly or happily, this engine that I believe is going to save the world is probably going to be implemented in the Middle East. That's going to be the first place it actually gets implemented. I actually find this sort of, what's the right word, religious. OU812 is going to be implemented in the Holy Land. That's the way I look at it. And everything has been coming together. We've introduced to the right people. We've got the U.S. Commerce Department very anxious to introduce us to the people in that region that have the big bucks. And they're going to fund this engine that I believe will save the world. So that's my mission, is to save the world. That's it for the presentation. I've gone 12 minutes over, and I apologize for that. I was going, as fast as I could and still answer questions. If you guys have any other questions, I'd be glad to entertain them. But other than that, I will stop presenting. And now you're going to see probably my ugly mug. And who has a question?
I do, Charles.
Okay, Charles, talk to me.
So what do you need to like what do you need to make this happen? Are there any sort of gaps in the support you have? Are there any sort of nice to haves that would make a difference?
Charles, that's a wonderful question. You know what we need? We need a team. We need teams. And the thing is that I said OU812 is very inclusive in the sense that I want to work with people that I want to work with. But the bottom line is that a team is made up of all different talents. Okay, I'm a pointy-headed patent attorney that happens to invent, and that's what I do. That's what I'm not a business guy. I'll tell you, I'm the first to admit I am not a business guy. Okay. So having a team member step up to the plate as a business person, that has a track record, that believes in the model, they're going to get a piece of the pie. Because why? Everybody gets a piece of the pie in my world. This is not Burning Man, which I think, by the way, is the biggest scam on earth. You've got multimillionaires that created a corporation and a nonprofit, and they get a bunch of idiots to spend $1 billion a year to burn shit in the desert and make them more millionaires, and everybody volunteers. Now, I'm not very popular in the Burning Man community for being so blunt, but it's the truth. We've got all this talent that we're burning $1 billion a year, burning art in the desert. Okay, when we could be becoming self-sufficient from food and energy in 2 years. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that is more important than art, but I'm saying it is more important than art, because look at where we are right now with the COVID. Had we done that already, we'd already have a food network and an energy network. And once you have food and energy, what's left? You have, now you can do what you want. And yes, it is art. It is art. But by the same token, what is the cost of the art? I say, let's take a year off of burning, permaculture all the yards, get off the grid, and then the following year we can make all the freaking art we want, and we will actually have a sustainable ecosystem. Right now we've got a distributed community in the Burning Man community, and what I often hear from all the people that I talk to about my greenhouses, I don't have any land. Well, you know what? I've got an acre in my backyard, and I've offered it up. I said, look, come build a garden, keep the vegetables. So there's literally no excuse. The only excuse is the system that we have right now that we've realized is so fragile. A little bug has wiped out this whole system that we think is so great. Why? Because we're too busy having lattes at Starbucks to realize that, tomorrow we could have no economy. So so I'm not going to rant too much about that, but the bottom line is, I want to create an open collaborative system of people that I love. My goal is to make every single one of my friends and family a multimillionaire. That's my goal, to make every single one of them independently wealthy and to allow them to do what they love as part of this system, whether it's art or whatever, so sorry for rambling.
Yeah, I was trying to get an answer as to like, what do you need?
I need $200 million.
Okay. So, what do you need to get the $200 million then?
I need to go to the UAE and I need to find somebody with some very deep pockets, and I hear they have them over there. So,
Are you looking for people who might be interested and have deep pockets?
I'm looking for angels. We're at the angel stage, and you know what? There's not a lot of angels. There's a slide that Barbara didn't want me to put up, but I'm going to put it up anyways, because this is exactly how I feel, and this is what we're trying to solve with OU812. And some people are going to get offended, and I'm like, you know what? I don't give a shit. I offend people all the time, and that's what I do because I speak the truth. And I'm going to share my screen for a second, and let's see here, so you can see what I'm showing that my wife didn't want me to show, but I'm going to show it anyways. Let me know when you can see this. This is the system we have right now. This is it. I know startups that own 0.1% of their own company. 0.1%. Think about that. The VCs have 99.9%. And you know what they say? Hey, 0.1% of $1 billion is a lot of money. Well, that's bullshit in my world. I want the VCs to have, some percentage, but not 99.9. And that's why we're building the Open Innovation Engine, is to allow us to self-fund. I'm selling my own portfolios to fund the system. I don't want to say I'm sacrificing, because it's not a sacrifice for me. I will sell my patent portfolios right now for $100 million. Somebody says, hey, here's $100 million. They can have my entire patent portfolio. And I will use that to go into OU812 and now start doing what I need to do, which is help the little people. So this system is not for me. It's for our children's 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 children. And enough preaching. And I hope I didn't piss off too many people, but, I tend to do that sometimes. And that is it. We have groups in Facebook. We have a bunch of groups. I think I've lost count. We're up to like 40 or 45 or whatever. And typically, when I have a new area that's interesting to me, I will create a group. We have women in technology, kids in technology, marine tech, whatever. If you go to Facebook, and I know a lot of you are not on Facebook, so we're creating other channels. We're on MeWe, LinkedIn. We're pretty much everywhere. But if you can see my screen, if you search OU812 like this, oops, and then if you go to the groups tab, you'll see the groups that we have, and it goes for a while. And the most important group is the education team, because the core strength of the OU812 system is teaching people how to write patents. That's the core part. So with this, if there's no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the recording and the screen sharing. And let's see, Ann has a question. So even if you sell your aquaponics system to the AE, it still will be open source. Yes. I will not sell my aquaponics system to anybody that does not agree to letting the little people build it. So if somebody says, look, I want your system, but I'm going to sue little people, I don't want to deal with them, and I don't care who they are, because that's not the world that I want. I want a world where people share their stuff, and build upon it. And by the way, part of opening it is that it encourages people to put patents into the system. For example, all my little inventors that have patents that haven't been able to do anything with it are putting their patents into the system. And now I'm going to monetize them. They may never sell, actually, but at least I'm going to give them a mechanism for potentially monetizing their patents. Gene asked a question, if it's open source, how will the owner make money? It's because it's protected open source, Gene. What that means is that it's open to the little people, i.e. personal and educational use. But if the big people, i.e. the corporations, want it, they have to pay. So it's protected open source, if that answers your question.
Carlos, is there within all the groups a way of networking with, say for instance, you've got a project in mind and you perhaps need, some input or collaboration? Is there a hub where we can find, someone that's, that may have a particular asset to them that we can help with?
Are you saying if I have a search mechanism for finding IPR assets?
No. Another team member in maybe one of the groups. So I don't know. Let's just say I've got something that needs software and marketing.
Yeah.
Assistance here. How is there a facility in OU812 to search for other members that may be able to assist?
Yeah, and right now it's being done through Top Team. OU812 Top Team is the main team, and I'm using Facebook. I know they use us, and I'm using them because they give me unlimited groups. And I think, Mark, you're a member of OU812 Top Team, I believe. And you can invite friends. Just being in the group doesn't really mean anything till there's a project. But there are announcements. Okay, so there's an announcements tab, which is not loading. But in the announcements tabs is where I list all the important stuff, like, how is OU812 going to work? What sort of projects have we created? For example, most recently, we did a project in the gaming division. And you'll see here, well, here's the question. Why are we opening so many channels? Well, because we want redundancy. That was a question that came up. So if you go through the announcements section, you will see all the projects. Here's a patent-a-thon we did with Paul Smith and Mark English, 2 team members, where we're patenting. I'm not sharing my screen anymore, am I? Oh, shit. I apologize for that because you guys don't know what I'm talking about. So the OU812 Top Team, is sort of like, well, it's the top team. That's where all the other teams sort of form. But if you search OU812 and hit groups, if you guys can see this, there's a whole bunch of groups under the group tab, sustainability, etc. But a top team is the main team, and that's sort of the break-off point. And, we have, I believe, like 300 plus members in it. And these members cover all technologies, 3D printing, hemp, you name it, and the announcement section is where we list these projects that we do. We call them patent-a-thons. And a patent-a-thon is where we get a bunch of people together and, 5 inventors enter, 1 patent leaves. That's the way we do it. So, for example, we did a patent-a-thon most recently in the medical space, respect to the COVID. We developed some HEPA masks based on these scuba masks. Now there was prior art with masks that just attached a filter to the end, but the problem that I found was that you couldn't get HEPA level filtration out of it because it's very difficult to suck through, a membrane that excludes everything that's lower than 0.3 microns with 99% accuracy. So we filed a provisional that includes a blower with a filter that now allows you to have filtered HEPA air in a mask. And now this is open source, so in other words, if anybody wants to build it, we want people to build it. And the idea is that these things are going to be on backpacks and, eventually they're going to be, maybe they'll have some value, maybe they won't. Bernie just told me that healthcare is a human right, and he's right. And that's why, these patents are not going to be, they're going to be open to the people, first responders. This was the testing that I did on the mask to prove that it was, HEPA level. This was some of the earlier testing. And, the idea is that we're going to have these backpacks, that hold the blower. And most recently, I found a better blower. It's actually a medical grade blower. And I was actually able to get down to HEPA level filtration. And the idea, it runs off of a 12-volt battery. Right now, Ann just asked to join the OU812 DIY team, and I'm going to approve her. So so every team has projects, right? And this was an OU812 project, DIY team project. This is actually the medical blower, the medical grade blower. I've got multi-stage filter on the input. Multi-stage HEPA filter on the input to the mask. And with this, I was achieving 0 particles at 0.3 micron with 100% accuracy. Sometimes the accuracy would get a little bit worse. And did I answer your question? Now I forgot whether I even answered your question, Mark. So yeah, where do projects come from? That's where they come from. So these projects, get started in the various teams. They get listed in the announcement section, and the users are allowed to jump in and say, hey, I had a project where we said we need a programmer, right? We did a gaming app project, for example. It was that actually was my idea, where we came up with an idea for a video game, and we did a patent-a-thon, and we filed a provisional patent application on the game idea. So I'm looking at, OU812 gaming team, and this was a gaming team project that we did a patent-a-thon on. And, besides posts relevant to the content, this is also where we post our projects, and then we post them on the main group and allow people to jump in on the project. So if somebody needed a marketing person, for example, the innovator could say, yeah, I need a marketing person for this, right? So Mark is the innovator. I know he has some really cool fish feeders. And for example, he might say, hey, I need a marketing person to help me out. And in that respect, they could join the group and execute the project. And
so when we call out in though, Carlos, do we just announce that in the top team?
Well, that's a good point. We don't announce anything that's confidential on any Facebook group.
That's right. So that's what I'm asking. How do I put the call out for?
If you search the announcement, first of all, you can write a very general description, right? Like, hey, I need a marketing person for a game-related invention. Okay, you haven't said anything except that you need a marketing person. And we have many, many channels. We have, in fact, that's one of the reasons I made an announcement about the channels, was that somebody said, why do you have so many channels? That came up quite a bit. People were very upset that I kept creating all these channels. And I said, well, it's actually for redundancy. There's a method to the madness. And, we want to be able to survive whether certain channels go down. And we're actually creating our own channel based on that architecture that we showed you earlier. When that architecture is built, OU812 will have its own private closed network where we'll be able to discuss things in ways that people can't steal it. For now, what we do is we do these patent-a-thons where we file from start to finish in less than 24 hours. That's how we're doing security right now. We figure if somebody's listening, a bad actor, a hacker, whatever, we're going to be filing a case in less than 24 hours. We did the gaming patent, I think, in 7.5 hours. We recently did another patent, the open source. I'm sorry, the blockchain architecture was actually a big one. That one took about 12 hours. But these things typically take around 40 hours in conventionally, so, and that's because I've trained everybody on how to do this. So for example, here's OU812 DIY team patent-a-thon at 1500 DC time, meeting URL right here. Update, patent-a-thon moved, so this is, if you would have clicked on that meeting URL, you would have been in that meeting and you would have participated in this patent-a-thon. The only people that were participated were Mark English and Paul Smith. This guy, Leon McKinty, he's actually an inventor in another, no problem, Gene. He's actually an inventor on another project that's going to be starting, but we let anybody come in because we want them to learn the process. And also, we want to figure out who the bad actors are, right? In other words, we're open, right? So if you want to come join this patent-a-thon, you can join. If you contribute in a substantive way, you become an inventor. However, if you don't contribute in a substantive way, we've got a log of you being there. And if you all of a sudden start filing patents on what we did during the patent-a-thon, you're going to get the boot pretty quick, because this is not socialism. This is more like the military, the few, the proud, so people will get booted if the community thinks that they're bad actors. Does that answer your question about projects? And by the way, there's that's right. You also told me that how do I find things? If you search, you can search this team, and if you know some of the channels, there's we're adding them all the time. I just recently added Band to the channel. Band is another messenger. Hey, join our Band group. We have name one. We have Telegram. Just name a channel. We've been adding channels on every single possible group that we can. We've got Slack, and we keep adding them as they come up. So what you would do is you would contact me through one of these channels, or you would go through Messenger and say, hey, you'd say, hey, Carlos, I've got an idea. Let's talk about it. And I would say, cool, let's go into one of these channels. Let's kick the tires on it. And then once we got the tires kicked on it, then we decide whether we're going to patent it or not, right? And if we're going to patent it, then we have a patent-a-thon and we file the patent. So I want to keep it sort of lean and mean and streamlined for people to be able to participate. Now, there are out-of-pocket costs, as you know, I live in a house. I have a mortgage. The patent office charges fees for filing these cases. My time discounted is worth about $475 an hour. I should be at around $1,500 an hour, but I keep it at $475 because I work with the little people. I know $475 is a lot of money, but $1,500 is a lot more money. So point being is that I'm trying to make this, accessible to the little people. But with that, we need help, until I get funded, I can't keep covering government fees. I can't keep working for free in the hopes that a patent is going to issue someday. So I would expect team members that want to do these projects to kick in on some of the costs, some of the filing fees and some of the flat fees that my firm charges for doing these things, because, I have to keep the lights on that are behind me. And it's at 1936, and I'm gonna end this because I'm gonna go ahead and appreciate people's times. It is Friday night, you know, and I know you guys many beers to drink alone or with somebody 6 feet away. So thank you so much for attending, and I hope this was helpful. And you know where to find me. I'm very easy to find. In fact, if you can't find me, there's a problem. So
Carlos, thank you so much. This has been great.
You are welcome. And with this, I'm going to stop recording, and I'm going to say goodbye. And I believe the thing stays up. I think everybody has to leave before it goes down. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now. And